space. It's cold, it's dark, and if you're human like me, it's indifferent. You can float through it for years, seeing wonders beyond imagination, marvels that would have made explorers from Earth fall to their knees. But you learn something out here, out in the vast nothingness. It doesn't care about you. Space doesn't care about anything, and neither does the Dominion. I've been out here for years now. I've seen the endless stars, the countless worlds. And yet, for all our voyages and all our travels, there's always the reminder that we're the youngest species on the galactic stage. Sure, we're part of the Dominion now, one of the many enlightened species with a seat at the table. But what does that really mean? Out here, we're still the outsiders, the newcomers, the ones who barely learned how to walk while others have been sprinting across galaxies for millennia. My name's Elias Drayke. I'm the captain of the Ardent Explorer, a small diplomatic vessel that serves as humanity's hand, extended to the Dominion. I like to think of myself as an explorer, even though most days it feels like I'm just following orders and playing by rules that weren't written with humans in mind. But that's the job, isn't it? Stick to the plan, stay quiet, and don't cause trouble. That's how we keep our place in the Dominion, by being the least troublesome. So here I am, sitting in the cockpit of a ship that's supposed to be on a routine mission. Routine. That's a word I've come to hate. When you hear it out here in space, it means there's no danger, no excitement. Just the monotony of flying to some far-off system, scanning a planet and reporting back, all in a day's work. But routine isn't always safe. Sometimes it's the most dangerous thing in the universe. We were supposed to assess a planet on the far edge of Dominion space, a remote world that might serve as a refueling station. The Dominion loves efficiency, and they love their outposts. The idea was simple. Fly in, scan the planet, determine if it's useful, and report back. No complications, no drama. But as we approached the planet, something strange flickered across the sensors. It was faint, almost undetectable. A blip of energy that came and went so quickly, the rest of the crew didn't even notice. But I did. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, feeling this strange sense of unease creeping into my gut. You know that feeling? That tightness in your chest that tells you something's wrong, even though you don't have any real evidence to back it up. That was me sitting in the cockpit, feeling the weight of something I couldn't quite explain. So I spoke up. I told Commander Thalios, our Narmok commander, that we should investigate. We should be cautious. Thalios was tall, reptilian, with those cold, predatory eyes that always seemed to look down on me. The Narmok are an old race, part of the Dominion for thousands of years, and they don't particularly care for humans. To him, I was just another young captain playing at being an explorer. "It's nothing," he said. "Stick to the mission. You worry too much." Maybe he was right. Maybe I did worry too much, but that feeling wouldn't go away. It clung to me like a shadow, following me as I monitored the ship's systems, waiting for something to happen. And then it did. Without warning, the ship shuddered. It wasn't a slight vibration like you'd get from hitting a patch of turbulence. No, this was something else. Something violent. The Ardent Explorer rocked as alarms blared through the ship. I could hear the hull groaning under the pressure, metal straining and creaking as someone attacked us. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding in my chest as the ship lurched again. I could hear the crew shouting, voices overlapping in confusion and panic. Thalios was barking orders, but even he sounded unsure, as if he hadn't expected this. None of us had. I raced to the viewport and caught sight of them, sleek black ships emerging from the darkness like predators. They moved with purpose, with a kind of deadly grace that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't recognize the design. These weren't Dominion ships. These weren't pirates either. No, this was something else entirely. Another blast rocked the ship and I was thrown to the floor. Pain shot through my side as I hit the ground hard, the cold metal biting into my skin. I tried to push myself up, but everything was spinning. My head was pounding, the sound of alarms and explosions mixing into a chaotic symphony of destruction. I remember looking up just for a moment and catching a glimpse of the enemy ships through the viewport. They were coming for us, relentless, merciless. Whoever they weren't just trying to disable us. They were trying to erase us. And then everything went black. When I came to, there was silence. Not the kind of silence you get after a battle, when the dust is still settling and people are catching their breath. No, this was the kind of silence that comes when everything is gone, when there's nothing left to fight for. I opened my eyes, blinking against the harsh light that filtered through the broken viewport. The ship was gone. No, not gone. It was still there, but it was a wreck. A twisted, burning mess scattered across the surface of a planet I didn't recognize. Smoke hung in the air, thick and choking, as the fires from the crash burned around me. I pushed myself up, wincing as pain shot through my body. My head was throbbing, and I could feel the warm trickle of blood running down the side of my face. I touched it gingerly, flinching at the sharp sting, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I looked around. Bodies. So many bodies. Alien and human alike, scattered across the wreckage like broken dolls. My crew, my people, gone. I knelt beside one of them, Commander Thalios. His cold reptilian eyes stared up at the sky, unblinking. I didn't feel anything. Not then. There was no time for grief, no time for mourning. I had to survive. I staggered to the communications array, hoping, praying that I could send out a distress signal. But the systems were fried. Everything was dead, except for one weak transmitter that could only broadcast on old human frequencies. I knew the chances of anyone picking up the signal were slim, but I didn't have any other options. I keyed in the message, my voice hoarse and shaking as I spoke. This is Captain Elias Drayke of the Ardent Explorer. We've been attacked, ships down, crews gone. I'm stranded on a planet in the Outer Rim, requesting immediate assistance. Please, someone, anyone, respond. But there was no reply, just static. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the flickering console, waiting for a response that would never come. Time seemed to blur, the seconds stretching into minutes, the minutes into hours. All I knew was that I couldn't stay here. The wreckage of the Ardent Explorer was a graveyard, and if I stayed, I would be buried along with it. I gathered what supplies I could, food, water, a med kit, and set out. The planet was a wasteland, barren and desolate, with jagged cliffs and sharp rocks that jutted out of the ground like broken teeth. The air was cold, biting at my skin with every step, and the wind howled like a living thing, carrying with it the faint sound of something distant, something old. I walked for hours, maybe longer. The landscape never changed, just endless rock and dust, stretching out as far as the eye could see. The sky was a dull grey, the sun hidden behind thick clouds that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Every now and then I'd catch a glimpse of something moving in the distance, shadows that flickered at the edge of my vision. But when I turned to look, there was nothing there. And then I saw it. A structure, half buried in the side of a mountain, looming over the horizon like a forgotten monument. It was ancient, far older than anything I had ever seen before. The walls were cracked and crumbling. But the design, the architecture, it wasn't Dominion. It wasn't human. This was something else, something older. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no telling what I might find inside, but I didn't have any other options. I couldn't stay out here in the open, exposed to whatever dangers this planet might hold. I stepped through the crumbling archway and into the darkness beyond. The air inside the structure was cold and damp, thick with the smell of metal and decay. I moved slowly, carefully, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The walls were lined with strange symbols, etched into the stone in a language I didn't recognize. I tried to make sense of them, but the markings were too worn, too faded with time. As I ventured deeper into the structure, I began to hear something, a faint, rhythmic sound that echoed through the corridors like a heartbeat. I followed the sound, my pulse quickening as I drew closer. The passageways grew narrower, the walls pressing in on me as the air grew colder, heavier. And then I found them. The Rylith. They were standing around a massive device in the center of a large chamber, their backs turned to me. Their voices were low, guttural, speaking in a language that sent a chill down my spine. I watched them from the shadows, my heart hammering in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The Rylith were supposed to be extinct. They were an ancient race, wiped out millennia ago. But here they were, very much alive. And they were building something big. I crept closer, staying hidden in the shadows as I observed them. The device in the center of the chamber was massive, its surface glowing with a faint, sickly light. It hummed with power, pulsing with a strange energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I couldn't understand everything they were saying, but I understood enough. This was a weapon powerful enough to destroy entire star systems, Dominion worlds, human worlds. They're going to burn it all down, I whispered to myself, my breath hitching in my throat. I had to stop them. I didn't know how, I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing for certain. I was the only one who could. For days I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching them, learning their routines, their weaknesses. I scavenged what I could from the wreckage of the ardent explorer, fashioning crude tools and weapons. And slowly, carefully, I began to sabotage their systems. I started small, rerouting power lines, cutting off their communications, disrupting their work in ways that would go unnoticed at first. They didn't suspect anything. Why would they? To them, I was just a human, insignificant, unimportant. But that was my advantage. They didn't see me as a threat, and I used that to my advantage. Day by day, I chipped away at their operation, slowing their progress as much as I could. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. They were getting closer to completing the weapon, and they were starting to notice the disruptions. I could hear them talking, their voices growing more urgent, more frantic. They were on edge. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what or who was causing it. I knew I didn't have much time. I made my way to the core chamber, explosives in hand. The device was massive, its surface glowing with that same sickly light. It hummed with power, its energy pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. I set the charges carefully, my hands shaking as I worked. I knew this was a one-way trip. There was no escape for me, no rescue. But that was okay. This was bigger than me. The moment the charges were set, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Rylith were coming. I had one last thing to do. I rushed to a nearby console and keyed in a final message, my voice shaking as I spoke into the weak human transmitter. If you're out there, if anyone's listening, this is Captain Elias Drayke. The Rylith, they're back. They're building a weapon that can destroy entire systems. I've done what I can. I've stopped them. But I'm not getting out of here. Tell my people. Tell them we can fight. We can always fight. The Rylith burst into the chamber just as the timer on the explosives hit 0. I stood there watching as the core detonated, sending a shockwave through the entire facility. The Rylith didn't stand a chance. Neither did I. But in that moment, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel regret. I felt peace, satisfaction. We were never supposed to survive out here. We were never supposed to make it. But we did. We always do. Somewhere out there, drifting through the cold expanse of space, my final message is still transmitting, bouncing off the stars, waiting for someone to hear it. This is Captain Elias Drayke. If you're hearing this, then I want you to know, we can fight. We can always fight, even when no one else is watching.